Hello everyone, this is Kieran from Keys Minis, and today we're going to take a look at my recipe for painting leather. So these are the paints you need, that's it. So the first stage is I usually do around 1 to 2 thin layers of Rhinox Hide. I'm probably on about my 3rd layer here on this because I forgot to film the first 2 stages. But just 2 thin, usually around 2 thin coats, because you get really good coverage with Rhinox Hide over a black base coat. So I'd gone with a black base coat on this, and yeah, just 2 nice thin layers, just work around the leather. Obviously with this miniature it's got quite a few little attachments, so just trying to work really carefully around those areas. I find this method works across most leather as well. You can do it on the smaller belt and braces at top. I might not do some of as many layers or some of the textures that I tried to build up on cloth, on like robes kind of leather. And just work in the front area just to finish that 3rd shade here of 3rd layer. Usually I try and work a lot in glaze consistency, but 2 thin coats will work really well here as well if you prefer that method, just for speed. So next up I'm going to use Doombull Brown, and you can be rough or as smooth as you want with this layer. All I'm going to do is just highlight up basically around the folds or where the leather might crease or crumple as well, and you can start to add some little scratches in as well, because it starts to build a nice texture up. I am not really working at a glaze consistency here. In some parts I did, but I usually try and work with just a really thin coat, because it allows me to build a little bit more texture. It's up to you as well, because most times I only really do 1 layer of this, but if you want to add a little bit extra depth and work with brighter layers, you could also work. So here I'm working quite thick, but if you're using quite a pointed brush, you could add an extra layer for a second one, just to draw out that reddy brown that Doombull has. I find I really like it as a colour. I think it offers a lot, and when I paint red leather I use it as like one of my main highlight stages as well, because mixing with Mephiston you can get some really nice textures with it. Next up, XV88, another probably one of my favourite colours. Here I'm going to start working some lines and scratches. I'm probably working a little bit thicker than what I usually do. That's just because I'm working behind the camera and I usually quite close to the model. But you can start to add in real texture here by adding some scratches across the leather. You don't have to just work it. Mainly I'm working around that Doombull Brown area, but if you want to add some extra depth, work in some of the darker recesses, drawing a scratch from the leather or whatever as well. Nice and thin, just work around all the areas, textures. It's up to you. You can work in a set way or set pattern, or you can, here I'm probably going a little bit too thick, but then I just thin it down, nice scratches. But you can like cross hatch with it, you can do whatever kind of way you want to build your textures up, because the next kind of layers, not the next layer, but the next layer after that, you can kind of draw some of it rear back depending on how much you want to draw it back as well. Around kind of the belts and the leather, this is the final stage I'll do on this one, because I don't want it to detract away from the leather of the robe. What I'd kind of just work on those is just like obviously just a point highlight, edge highlight around that, and maybe a scratch or 2 in certain areas. It depends each layer what you want to go up with. Next, working with Karak Stone. This is like the final point highlight. You can trying to work as small as I can here, and just I try and work more towards the bottom of the leather, so kind of where it had been scraping on things a little bit more, and just work, and then work some of those lines again. Sometimes I might work in the opposite direction to what I went in on the previous layer, because that allows me then to add more scratched edge texture. On the next stage we're going to kind of we'll draw it back if you want to go that far. Sometimes I get to this stage and I'm quite happy with it, and I can just leave it with that. Sometimes I'll work in the line, like an edge highlight kind of line as well. you can. I hated painting leather for a long time, but now I've started to really enjoy it because I found that you can just build up some really nice textures, and you can be as rough or just as loose as you want with it. Really, it all depends on what look you prefer. So here I just go a bit rough, just wipe it off sometimes. Tried to catch this edge highlight down here for you, but the camera kind of lost focus here. What I found with leather now is just having a lot of fun with it. Don't worry too much, even if you go a little bit too thick like I've gone here. If you do want to draw it back and do the next stage, it kind of allows you to be a lot looser, so don't worry. Again, normally I work in really thin scratches on this part, but because of where I'm firming behind the camera, I couldn't get the grip as well as I usually do. I'm really awkward. I like to bring the miniature really close to my face sometimes so I can see every little detail I'm working on. Even with a decent magnifying glass, I still do that. I still try and bring it as close as I can. Like I said, down the bottom, work around, and don't forget to kind of edge highlight under at the bottom. You could also use a scratchy detail if you want, rather than an edge highlight. And this is kind of what it looks like at this stage. Like I said, normally you could be quite happy with that. It looks fine, but I'm going for more of a rustic, worn look. So what I'm going to add in here is I'm going to mixture of 60-40 Doombull, a mixture of 60-40 Rhinox Hide to Doombull Brown. Usually, again, sorry about the blur, I'm not focused on the miniature. I usually go with a 50-50 mix, but I wanted to go more towards a brown, dark brown on this leather, so I went more towards a 60-40 mix because it allowed a bit more. It darkened the areas off a little bit more. But you can choose if you want to go more towards the reddish brown of the Doombull Brown. You can go with a mix of that. Really thin glaze consistency, probably to the probably 4 parts water to the mix usually here, or maybe even a little bit more water. It'll take a little bit longer, and then it's up to you how much you want to draw it back. You can just do one layer, but I think I went around two layers on this one because I just wanted to draw some of it back a little bit more. If you go thicker with the mixture, you're going to lose some of that colour a lot harsher, but you can see it kind of just draws it back and kind of builds a nice weathered texture. And then going back with Karak Stone now, I'm just going to bring in some more little highlights and try and work on those smaller areas. And just, I find here I can either do with Karak Stone, I could go back to the XV88 layer as well and add even more texture in if you want, and then go back with the Karak Stone layer after. But I just went straight to the Karak Stone because I just wanted to add in a bit more brighter layers, and just, even though I've gone with a more darker leather, I wanted to make the leather pop a little bit more here with some of the Karak Stone. And again, just working the bottom. And that's it. That's that finished texture. I was quite happy with this one. I kind of change up my leather recipes a little bit every now and again. I'm going to show you now. Here is one of Jelson Derrick, and on this final stage I went back again with another mixture of that Doombull Brown to really draw this back, and I worked more towards the reddy brown colours. Thank you.